Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 84, coming at you from the Valley. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. Rocking the Supercross shirt today. Just went to Supercross at the Arizona Cardinals Stadium this past weekend. Damn near sold out stadium. My guy Ken Roxon getting third overall in a Triple Crown race. So had some fun. The Triple Crowns are always fun in person. But enough about me. Let's jump in to some fights that have been announced. We will recap UFC Saudi Arabia and preview another pay-per-view weekend, UFC 312 in Sydney, Australia. But we have some bangers. We got Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos and Chidi Nkwani on March 15th. We got Jordan Vucenic, who we haven't seen in a while, and Chris Duncan, March 22nd. Kevin Holland staying active, looking to finally get in the win column against Gunnar Nelson on that 22nd card. We have Rafa Garcia and Joaquim Silva, March 29th. We have Torres Finney and Robert Valentine, April 5th. Very interesting fight between an Ultimate Fighter and Contender Series alum. We have Cortavius Ramius and Chong Ho Lee on the April 5th card, as well as Kennedy and Shekwaku and Martin Boudet. For UFC 314 in Miami, we have Yan Xiaonan and Virna Jandiroba for a potential title eliminator fight. We have Michelle Pereira and Abus Magomedov for April 26th, as well as Jacqueline Amarim and Poliana Viana. We have the bout that got scrapped, Ikram Aliskerov and Andre Muniz rescheduled for that April 26th card. And we also have the very explosive Contender Series alum, Malcolm Wellmaker, taking on Cameron Simon. So a lot of Contender Series and prospects getting their chance to shine. We have Marina Rodriguez and Jillian Robertson on May 3rd, as we're getting near the summer months. And Zhang Young Lee taking on Trevor Peek. We will talk about this later, but we have Jamal Pogues and Jairzinho Rosenstrike removed from the UFC. Jairzinho Rosenstrike, Biggie Boy, especially interesting as he had done so much for the UFC, had fought a murderer's row of contenders, and for some reason they just didn't want to keep his contract, although the heavyweight division is very shallow. We have Brandon Royval out of his fight against Manel Kape, and Asu Almabayev will be stepping in. We have Dominic Cruz sadly out of his fight against Rob Font, and it has been announced by Dominic Cruz on Instagram that he is retiring after he dislocated his shoulder 2 times. And for me, a longtime UFC fan, you know, the Randy Couture, the Tito days, the Chuck Liddell days, even a little bit of Ken Shamrock. I was a huge BJ Penn fan, and after BJ Penn, I didn't really have anybody to really root for. The UFC had acquired the WEC, and Dominic Cruz became that guy. He is now on the desk, very high IQ, does good calling the fights. He's a fresh 39 as he almost turns 40 in March. He would have fought damn near at 40 if he would have fought in Seattle against Rob Font. I wish he did get the retirement fight, but dislocating your shoulder 2 times, he talked about how bad of an injury it was. It makes sense. But he started at Rage in the Cage here in the Valley, fighting in Glendale and Phoenix. Went undefeated in Rage in the Cage. Went to Total Combat, fighting in San Diego. He helped with Alliance BJJ there, went undefeated there. Made his UFC debut for the featherweight championship against Uriah Faber. Lost in round 1 via guillotine. got a total combat victory, came back to the WEC, but at bantamweight, and just rattled off a ton of wins and became a WEC bantamweight champion. Defended the bout 3-4 times before the UFC merger. He had beat guys like Joseph Benavidez twice, Scott Jorgensen, and then got the rematch against Uriah Faber. Once it had come back to the UFC, got a unanimous decision win to keep his belt, beat Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson for the bantamweight bout. He had a ton of injuries. After that, for 3 years, came back, got more wins, defeated TJ Dillashaw, who is a stud in his own right, defeated Uriah Faber again, lost to Cody Garbrandt. That's kind of when things fell apart. He lost to Henry Cejudo, and then came back with wins against Casey Kenny and Pedro Munoz before losing to Marlon Vera. Although he was defeating Marlon Vera, he got caught in the 4th round with a brutal head kick. And even reading this back, I'm like, man, it is crazy to think Dominic Cruz in 2011, when Demetrius Johnson was still a stud, had defeated Dominic Cruz, had defeated him, defeated TJ Dillashaw. I'm going to have to go back and watch those fights. I almost forgot about the greatness. The guy is an absolute stud. UFC bantamweight champion 2 times, 3 successful title defenses, 2 during his first reign, 1 on the second. And obviously dominated in the WEC with 2 successful title defenses. Wow. Dominic Cruz, bravo. No shame. Hang your head high. Wish we could have saw you one more time. But bravo. One hell of a career. Elsewhere in MMA, before we talk about this past weekend Saudi Arabia card, we have officially booked KSI and Dylan Dennis. March 29th in boxing. Dylan Dennis supposedly on the GFL roster as well, so it'll be interesting to see that shake out for those of you that are on the craze of celebrity boxing. But this weekend we had the early morning Saudi Arabia card. I got to wake up, get some coffee, enjoy some fights, and your boy did good. We're staying hot to start the new year. 7-2 in my picks. That puts me overall at 507 wins, 248 losses, 7 no contests or draws. On the year, 23 wins, 7 losses. To recap this card, I would say Terrence McKinney and Shamil definitely showed out on the prelims. The main card was solid, but with the potential this card had, the stylistic matchups that there were, I thought it underwhelmed. But still some good fights, some meaningful results, just very cautious fighting by some of the fighters and striking heavy guys. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, which I think that's what I previewed it at. Some good fights we did not break down. Bogdan Grad got a round 2 knockout over Lucas Alexander in the prelims. But we'll kick this off with one of the fights I did get wrong. We had Jasmine Jasdavicius with a unanimous decision over Mayra Buena Silva, as Mayra has moved down to flyweight from strawweight. And to me, just what a sorry and pathetic performance this was from Mayra. You know, maybe the weight cut going back down was a bigger issue, but she just showed no desire, no fire or fight in her for the entire 15 minutes. And I didn't realize she used to train with Jasmine, but Jasmine just marched forward and just kind of brought the fight to her wherever she wanted. And once Mayra was taken down, and she's shown this in some of her fights of late as well, she just kind of accepts being on her back. She was gassed and pretty much done for the fight midway through round 2. So pretty disheartening performance by Mayra. Jasmine continues to do what she does, proves people wrong, and it seems like she just kind of lets her opponents defeat themselves. Like, okay, where can I find the opportunities? I don't have to take too many risks. I'm just going to pressure them and kind of have them fold. But statistically, Jasmine landed 164 total strikes, 56 of them significant. She had 3 takedowns in 5 attempts, and 7 minutes and 11 seconds of control time. Now, Mayra landed 41 total strikes, 37 of them significant with a submission attempt. So Jasmine extends her winning streak to 4. She is 6-1 since 2023. She moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 9. She's inside that top 10. Well deserved. Now, Mayra extends her losing streak to 3. She is 1-3-1 since 2023. She's been active. Things haven't gone her way. It just seems like she hasn't put in the work that is required here. But she goes into the new flyweight division rankings at number 15. So what's next? Well, Jasmine and Viviane Araújo, I think that fight makes a lot of sense. That is, if she's still with the UFC, as supposedly the GFL has drafted her. But I believe she still shows up in the UFC rankings. Let me double check here. This whole GFL thing, I'm really excited to see how this plays out. Viviane Araújo, she's still in the rankings. So I haven't seen her removed from the roster. I'm going to assume she's still there. And personally, I think the UFC cuts Myra at this point. But if they don't, she could fight Ariane De Silva. But then we had some quick work, light work of Terrence McKinney, round 1 TKO over the veteran Damir Hadzovic. And in a classic T-Rex way, he just came out, put the pressure on Damir, and absolutely folded him. It doesn't always work that way for Terrence, but man, he was just too much for the vet who's been inactive of late, and he gets to continue on his winning warpath. Statistically, Terrence landed 69 total strikes, 54 of them significant. He had a submission attempt, reversal, and a minute of control time. Again, that's all in round 1. That's high volume, just came in and put it on him. Damir only landed 4 total and significant, so 65 less than Terrence, and he had a takedown in 2 attempts. So Terrence starts a new winning streak. He moves to an even 3-3 since 2023, and Damir extends his losing streak to 2. He is 1-2 since 2021. So what's next? Well, I would love to see Terrence and Mike Davis, who also fought on this card. And for Damir, I'm assuming retirement's probably right around the corner. But if he does want to come back, how about a fight with Vince Pichel? Moving on, we had Shamil Gaziev with a round 1 TKO over Thomas Peterson. And here Shamil was just able to get it going with big power shots. I mean, Thomas came forward and even got a takedown early, and it really made you think, man, this is perfect. He could tire out Shamil, but Shamil was able to fight back up. I was very impressed, and then he found a shot that ended Thomas, and it just seemed like he weirdly accepted it. He sat down, was still cognizant, pulled his mouthpiece out like, I'm done. So kind of a weird ending there, but Shamil landing some absolute bombs, and it only took him 14 total and significant strikes with that knockdown, while Thomas landed 19 total and significant strikes with a takedown. So Shamil extends his winning streak to 2. He's 5-1 since 2023. He moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 11. And Thomas starts a new losing streak. He is 2-2 in the UFC. So where do these guys go next? Well, I would like to see Shamil fight Tai Tuivasa. And for Thomas, how about Junior Tafa? With the prelim headliner, we had Muhammad Naimov with unanimous decision over Khan Offley. And this was just Naimov showing out by outstriking and outgrappling Khan. You know, Khan battled. He tried to hang in there, but Naimov was just too much in this fight. Muhammad landed 79 total strikes, 32 of them significant. He had 2 takedowns and 5 minutes and 30 seconds of control time. So pretty high volume. If he got a takedown, he got it and had more than a full round of control time. Meanwhile, Khan landed 57 total, so about 20 less, 31 significant. But this was the big kicker. He was 0 for 6 in takedown attempts, although he did have 3 minutes and 35 seconds of control time. So let's look. I missed this. So Muhammad, he starts a new winning streak. He moves to 5-1 since 2023. He's been active, but overall in the UFC, he is 3-1. Meanwhile, Khan Offley loses his UFC debut, and he's only had the Ultimate Fighter in UFC of late. He hasn't fought in other promotions. But with the Myron Santos fight, outside of the Ultimate Fighter, he is 1-2 since 2023. So where do these guys go next? Well, I would like to see Naimov and Pat Sabatini go after it. And for Khan, he can fight with Kyle Nelson. But moving on to the main card, one of the underdogs, I tried to tell y'all, we had Fares Ziam with a unanimous decision over Mike Davis. And what a brilliant performance and showcase by Ziam here. He marched forward, put it to Mike to the point Mike was just kind of desperate to get the fight to the ground and was pulling guard, which we never see from Mike Davis. He has great jiu-jitsu, but why are we pulling guard in the first round? And usually he's aggressive. He was not aggressive at all. But after that wasn't paying dividends, Ziam torched Mike, even got a takedown until he was put in a really random calf slicer situation, which I'm not too sure how Mike was not able to get the finish because his knee was completely bent backwards, folding the wrong way. You'll just have to watch the fight back. And he was somehow able to last over a minute in that position. I'm not too sure if his knee is super flexible, if he just had a lucky angle, but I feel like most people would have been toast in that situation. Even the guys on the play-by-play are like, what the hell is going on? But outside of that, Ziam dominated. He showcased he could defend grappling. He's got good BJJ. He could hang. And he was able to be calm in those positions, which is critical because he is still very young and not even in his prime. Statistically, Fares landed 58 total strikes, 35 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns in 7 attempts, 2 reversals, and 7 minutes and 11 seconds of control time. Now, Mike landed 30 total strikes, 20 significant, but he only had 1 takedown in 8 attempts. Again, credit to Fares. He did have a submission attempt, 3 reversals, and 3 minutes and 59 seconds of control time. So Fares extends his winning streak to 5. He's 5-1 since 2022. And Mike ends his 4-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. Where do these gents go next? Well, I want Fares to step up in competition. A fight with Ludovic Klein would be an absolute banger. And for Mike, he could go back to the drawing board against Terrence McKinney, who got the win on this card. One hell of a fight we had here. We had Vinicius Oliveira with a unanimous decision over Said Nurmagomedov. Fight of the night, 50 G's for Vinicius, man. And this fight was just absolutely a ton of fun from the jump, well deserving of fight of the night. I mean, round 1 was all about Said leading the dance, landing nice strikes and getting an early takedown. And it really looked like Vinicius was going to be in a bad spot. But I did figure with the inactivity, if Vinicius pushed hard, he could just out-dog Said. And the pace of the fight was really high, and it really played into Lockdog's favor, as Vinicius took advantage in the second round by being the offensive grappler himself. And he was having success. He was just able to dig deeper in the third round and do more to close out the fight to win a very close decision bout. But well done. Vinicius is continuing to pass tests with flying colors. And supposedly he did this with an injury. He has done this and Ricky Simone in back-to-back fights. Watch out for Lockdog. Now, statistically, Said landed 69 total strikes, 38 of them significant with a takedown, but he was 1 for 9. So again, Vinicius's takedown defense has been spectacular. And Said had 58 seconds of control time. Now, Vinicius landed 68 total, so 1 less strike, but 43 significant, so 5 more significant. And he was 3 for 5 in takedown attempts. He had a submission attempt and 7 minutes and 12 seconds of control time. So Vinicius extends that winning streak to 5. He's a very impressive 4-0 in the UFC. And Said starts a new losing streak. He is 1-2 since 2023. So where does Vinicius go next? Well, I think he's right on the edge of the rankings, and a fight with Montel Jackson would be an absolutely great scrap. And for Said, how about Victor Henry? But moving on to the big dogs, we had Sergey Pavlovich with the unanimous decision over Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And this fight was just not what we expected. These next couple fights, definitely, you had so much anticipation. I figured this would be for sure a round 1 finish, but that wasn't the case. And Sergey has really been in a bad spot, just kind of throwing absolute nukes and gassing himself out. But here I think he has learned from those lessons, and he was just patient, picking his spots and landing the bigger shots. But these two have also trained together, so they know each other very well, and I think that played into it. But he had probably just wanted to be able to pick his spots and not let Jairzinho counter. That must have been the game plan. I did expect more aggression, but it was a very measured fight where neither man wanted to make too many mistakes, and even Jairzinho didn't have a lot of countering opportunities because of the length advantage from Sergey. Statistically, Sergey landed 145 total strikes, but only 25 of them significant. Never thought we'd see numbers like that from him. He did have 2 takedowns and 6 minutes and 17 seconds of control time. Now, Jairzinho landed 23 total strikes, 17 of them significant. So Sergey puts an end to that 2-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak. He's 2-2 since 2023 and stays at number 4 in the rankings. Now, Jairzinho ends his 2-fight winning streak. He does start a new losing streak, and he is 2-2 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I think Sergey and Cyril Gane has to be next. And for Jairzinho, he's been released from the UFC. Hopefully he finds a good landing pad somewhere else because he is still a very quality heavyweight. Moving on, we had Michael Page with the unanimous decision over Sharo Magomedov, another underdog pick that came through for your boy. And this fight was very measured, just like the heavyweights. Both men had respected each other's kickboxing skills, but MVP was just able to lunge in and out of distance. His karate was too crisp for Shara to handle. And round 1, not a lot of action had taken place, but MVP landed more, and round 2 was much of the same, which then had Shara frustrated. He kind of let his combos go more by round 3, knowing that he needed a finish to win, but it was too late, too little too late by that point, and MVP's defense really was the big difference here. I was just surprised Shara didn't throw his kicks nearly as much as we are used to, but I know a lot of that has to do with MVP being at a distance and having that good defense and also having a reach advantage. But although MVP looked a lot smaller moving up in weight classes, he was nimble, he stood his ground, and he got the job done. Huge win for MVP. What a start to his UFC career. But statistically, MVP landed 47 total strikes, 43 of them significant. He had 50 seconds of control time, and he was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. And Shara landed 50 total strikes, 38 of them significant, and he had 40 seconds of control time. Now, MVP starts a new winning streak. He's 2-1 in the UFC. He stays at number 15 in the rankings. And Shara suffers his first pro loss. He is 4-1 in the UFC since 2023. Now for the Pirate, I think you got to give him a solid fight. Shara and Jung-Young Park, that's a fun fight to make for me. And for MVP, I do think he goes back to welterweight, gives the fans what they want. Give us the Stephen Thompson MVP karate showdown. But I doubt that either of those guys actually accept that fight. So if not, how about a scrap with Jeff Neal? But to the shocking main event, the second fight I got wrong. Man, what a bummer this was, but very impressive performance by Nasruddin Imavov with a round 2 TKO over Israel Adesanya. And honestly, the fight started great for Stylebender. In the first round, all was going well until it wasn't. Israel was defending the takedown attempts for Nasruddin. He was able to land some nice kicks and combos and looked like he was on pace to outpoint him. The only moment Nasruddin had in the first round was a nice uppercut that landed, but that really was the difference, is Izzy wasn't able to bounce back and get enough separation to avoid the power shots from Imavov, as he landed a beautiful, massive hook that rocked Izzy. He wasn't able to recover in time. I did think it was a good stoppage. I don't think Izzy was going to come back from it. I know it was somewhat debatable, but man, Nasruddin, he had prepped to make the big strikes. Clearly, Izzy isn't able to escape and create distance as quickly as he used to. and his chin is a little suspect at this point. Statistically, Izzy landed 32 total strikes, 26 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts, while Nasruddin landed 18 total strikes, 15 of them significant. So you can see Izzy almost doubled up the volume, so in round 1 he was really on his way. But Nasruddin got that knockdown. He was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts. Izzy was shucking those away, and he did have 44 seconds of control time. So Nasruddin extends his winning streak to 4. He's 4-1-1 since 2023. He moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 2. And Israel extends his losing streak to 3, which who would have ever thought we would be saying that? He's 3-4 since 2022, and he moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 4. Now we know that Nasruddin wants the title shot, but Khamzat's going to get the winner of DDP and Sean Strickland. So I think a fight with Robert Whittaker would make sense. I do expect Izzy to take some time off, and I'm not sure what's next for him, but I think a fight with Brendan Allen would be the next one to make. Now this weekend we have the pay-per-view Down Under. We got the UFC 312 early prelims at 3 p.m. Pacific, the prelims at 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN2. And to preview this card, honestly, this is a very shallow card for a pay-per-view. It's littered with a bunch of overseas, unproven, and young prospects. Most MMA casuals probably only know the main and the co-main, but they are very fun fights. I don't have excitement for any other fight on this card, sadly. I'm previewing it a 4 out of 10. I actually think on paper the Saudi Arabia card would be a lot better, but I hope it performs better because besides the T-Rex and Shamil round 1 knockouts, I mean, Ziam showed out, the Vinicius fight was good, but the other fights were pretty lackluster. So hopefully it over-delivers, but some good fights that we will not break down. We have Dana White Contender Series alum Jonathan McAuliffe taking on Kevin Jousset. We have Alexander Volkov's training partner Colby Thickness in on short notice against Ilya Toporia's brother and coach Alexandre Topuria. We have Contender Series alum Tom Nolan against Vyacheslav Borshev. And in the main card, Jake Matthews taking on Francisco Prado. But we'll kick this off in the prelims. We have Rong Zhu, 24 years old with a 25-6 record, taking on Cody Steele, 29 years old with an undefeated 7-0 record. Now this is a fun matchup between two prospects in different career positions. Rong Zhu is getting a second chance at the UFC after leaving and not competing for a while as he had to go into the road to the UFC. And Cody is a grappling heavy fighter who's already almost 30 years old and in his prime athletic window today. Breaking it down, Rong Zhu trains out of ATT. He's a road to the UFC alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 3-1 since 2023. 15 of his 25 wins are via knockout, 6 via submission, so 21 of his 25 wins via finish. Again, 31 fights, 21 via finish, and he is 24 years old. This kid's going to be a stud. Now, Cody trains out of Syndicate MMA. He's a Fury FC and Contender Series alum. He's been involved in submission, underground, and Fight Pass invitationals because of his grappling. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's 1-0 in the UFC. And 4 of his 7 wins are via knockout. Now, sadly for Rong Zhu, he's improved a lot. He's growing. I just think today he's not going to be able to handle Cody's pressure and grappling ability. I don't think that he is going to have issues with the striking because I do think he'll be the better striker, more powerful, but I don't think he's going to be able to defend enough takedowns and get back up when he does get taken down to win the rounds. So I think Cody gets good top control and kind of grapples his way to victory. For that reason, I'm taking Cody Steele, and I am avoiding him on any parlays where possible. Moving on, we have Wang the Joker Kong, 32 years old with a 6-1 record, taking on Bruna the Special One Brazil, 31 years old with a 10-4-1 record. Now, to me, this fight's all about Wang getting humbled and working her butt off to get back in the octagon and right the ship. She didn't like taking a loss, and Bruna's had mixed results in the UFC thus far, but she's not a slouch by any means, as she's in her prime at 31, and she gets a win here. That's a nice addition to her resume as well. Breaking it down, Wang has a kickboxing, sanda, and boxing style. She won gold in the 2013 World Championships for sanda. She is a Road to the UFC alum. She's on a one-fight losing streak and is 2-1 in the UFC. Bruna is an LFA and Contender Series alum. She's on a one-fight winning streak and is 3-2 in the UFC. But looking at this fight, I do think I expect Wang to be a bit more measured, but to be the aggressive fighter and pressure Bruna into making this her style of a fight. I do think she gets the job done before the decisions. For that reason, I'm taking Wang Kong. I am putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, still in the prelims. We have Gabriel Mosquetino Santos, 28 years old with an 11-2 record, taking on Jack Farr Jenkins, 31 years old with a 13-3 record. Now, in this fight, both men are kind of in the same spot, looking to stack up wins for their prime window and move up in the rankings. Jack really needs to get a win for that purpose, and Gabriel is just looking to continue doing what he's done, as he has already faced really good stiff competition in his young UFC career. Now, breaking it down, Gabriel is on a one-fight winning streak. He's 1-2 in the UFC. He's an LFA alum. 4 of his 11 wins are via submission, 3 via knockout. So 7 of his 11 wins are via finish. And Jack is a Contender Series alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak. He's 4-1 in the UFC. 6 of his 13 wins are via knockout, 3 via submission. So 9 of his 13 wins are via finish. And Jack is rocking a 3-inch leg reach advantage. Now, this fight should be a doozy. I really do enjoy what I've seen from Gabriel in his young career thus far, and I think he's going to be able to mix in grappling and striking well enough to tire out Jack and wear him out over the course of 15 minutes. Jack has passed all of his tests this far in the UFC, besides the fight where he injured his arm against Chepe Mariscal. But the winner of this fight is really going to set themselves up to be on a great path. I do think there's a lot on the line, but I am taking Gabriel Santos. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the main card. We have Jimmy Crute, 28 years old with a 12-4-1 record, taking on Rodolfo Trator Bellato, 28 years old with a 12-2 record. Now, this fight is just a good example and showcases how every fighter has a completely different path. Your career could go way different from one man to another in different countries, different promotions, on your road to victory to the UFC. Jimmy has been with the UFC since 2018. He's had 10 fights with the promotion over 7 years, and he's sustained a lot of injuries. He even technically retired at one point, although he's only 28. And Rodolfo Bellato is 28, got to the UFC last year, and started his pro career a year before Jimmy was in the UFC. Right now, Rodolfo is on a roll. He's full of momentum. But Jimmy has been dealing with multiple injuries and hasn't won in the UFC since October of 2020. So there is a lot on the line for him, and he's got to be hungrier than ever. Breaking it down, Jimmy is an orthodox fighter. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a Contender Series alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak with the draw. 5 of his 12 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so 9 of his 12 wins via finish. 2 of his 4 losses are via knockout, and 2 via submission. Now, Rodolfo is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC. 7 of his 12 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so 11 of his 12 wins are via finish, and he does have a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Rodolfo is a solid fighter with a ton of power, but Jimmy is a well-rounded fighter who has a ton of UFC experience, and he has faced some of the best competition in the light heavyweight division. As he nears 29 and he is entering his prime, I expect him to show that he's leveled up, be able to make this fight ugly, tire out Rodolfo to win an ugly fight, and I do think grappling and takedowns play a huge part in this fight. So I am taking Jimmy Crute, but I am going to avoid this on a parlay. I'm sure this will be a very close decision fight. Moving on. Why this is in the main card, I mean, I feel sorry for the people that are paying for this fight, but we got Justin Badman Tafa, 31 years old with a 7-4 record, taking on Taliesin Chikau Teixeira, 25 years old with an undefeated 7-0 record. Again, I'm really surprised this is so high on the main card, but the UFC must really be wanting to promote Taliesin. Taliesin has dominated his opponents in the LFA and Contender Series, never seeing a second round. And Justin has had up and down success. He really could use a win here as his time is now, as he's in his prime at 31. Breaking it down, Justin has a blue belt in BJJ. He's an XFC alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 2-1-1 since 2023, and all 7 of his wins are via knockout. Now, Taliesin is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's undefeated on a 7-fight winning streak, and he is making his UFC debut. 6 of his 7 wins are via knockout, and he is rocking a 9-inch reach advantage and a 3-inch leg reach advantage. Now, I do think that Taliesin's length and power are going to be too much for Tafa. Tafa does well taking damage and letting his opponents wear themselves out to get his own finishes, but I don't think that's going to happen here. I'm guessing this is another round 1 slugfest that ends sooner than later. For that reason, I'm taking Taliesin Teixeira. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we have Zhang Magnum Weili, 35 years old with a 25-3 record, taking on Tatiana Suarez, 34 years old with an undefeated 11-0 record and the number 1 next to her name. Now, we have all expected Tatiana to eventually be here fighting for a title, but we didn't expect it in this manner. After all of her injuries and health issues, she's come back and won 2 fights to earn the shot because there is a lack of exciting options, and the UFC is clearly pushing her while they can, as she's already 34 years old and hasn't had a ton of fights in the UFC and is only 11-0. Excuse me. Now, Zhang trains out of Bang Tao Muay Thai and MMA. She has a brown belt in BJJ. She is the current strawweight champion, and she's been champ 2 times with 3 successful title defenses overall. She's the first Chinese champion in UFC history. 3 of her last 4 fights have been performance of the night. She's showing up. She's showing out. She has the largest striking differential in a bout in UFC women's history, 288-21 against Amanda Lemos. She has the most significant ground strikes landed in a UFC women's strawweight bout. That was 96 against Amanda Lemos. She, in that exact same fight, has the most total ground strikes landed at 225 and the most total strikes landed at 296. She had the 2020 Fight of the Year against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, their first fight, best women's fight of all time. She had the 2022 Knockout of the Year in the second fight against Joanna, the 2022 Female Fighter of the Year, 2024 Female Fighter of the Year. She's on a 4-fight winning streak, and 11 of her 25 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission, so 19 of her 25 fights via finish. Now, Tatiana has a wrestling style. She has a black belt in BJJ. She won gold in the 2013 and 15 World Jiu-Jitsu Championships. She's an Ultimate Fighter alum. 5 of her 10 wins are via submission. She's undefeated on a 10-fight winning streak and is 7-0 in the UFC. And she has a 3-inch reach and leg reach advantage. Now, this really is an interesting matchup because of the unknowns of what Tatiana really could do, as she hasn't fought high-level strikers in the division that are as good as Zhang Weili. I think people forget that how good Zhang is. The fact that she's the underdog blows me away. She has submitted Alexa Grasso, but that was before she really got going back in 2018. Tatiana has also grappled her way to victory against the likes of Jessica Andrade and Montana De La Rosa since she's returned from her knee injuries. But I think Tatiana is going to I do think she'll have success grappling Zhang, but I don't think she's going to be able to keep her there, have top control long enough to win the rounds. And Weili has showcased that she has really good cardio. The only fighter Zhang has lost to was your girl Rose Namajunas, and that was due to her striking ability. Zhang has defeated many good grapplers like Carla Esparza, where she was only taken down one time. And I think Zhang is more prepared as she's been fighting world-class talent. She's continuing to show that she's dedicated and leveling up. She goes to new gyms and has more places to take the fight. I haven't seen Tatiana strike with the best. I've never really been super impressed with her striking, and I don't think we'll see that here. For that reason, I'm saying, and still hammer this underdog. The dog's coming to eat. But I'm taking Zhang. We are putting that underdog money on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the main event in the rematch, we have Dricus Stillknox Duplessis, 31 years old with a 22-2 record, taking on Sean Strickland, 33 years old with a 29-6 record, and the number 1 next to his name. Now, the first fight here was somewhat controversial, definitely down to the wire. I did think Dricus won, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case here either. Both men have completely different fighting styles, and I'm sure they will make some adjustments. But what is Sean going to do to be able to bring to the table to change it up? He's very much who he is. He's going to teep, jab, try to come pressure forward. I just think Dricus is too big and powerful, and he continues to show that he's evolving and improving. Breaking it down, Sean is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Extreme Couture. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a King of the Cage alum and former champion with 5 successful title defenses. He's the former middleweight UFC champion. 3 of his last 4 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He has the most strikes landed per minute in a UFC middleweight division history at 6.32. He had the most significant strikes attempted in a UFC middleweight bout, which was 428 against Uriah Hall. He also has the most significant strikes attempted and total strikes in a UFC light heavyweight bout. So not only at middleweight, but light heavyweight. He had 405 attempted, 420 total against Nasruddin Imavov. He has the most significant head strikes landed in UFC middleweight bout, 173 against Uriah Hall. And he has the most significant strikes landed in a UFC middleweight title bout, 173 in their first fight against DDP. He's the 2020 Comeback Fighter of the Year. He had the 2024 Upset of the Year against Israel Adesanya. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 4-1 since 2023, and 11 of his 29 wins are via knockout. Now, Dricus is an orthodox fighter. He has a second-degree black belt in kickboxing. He won gold in the Waco Junior Championships in 2012, the World Kickboxing for Juniors. He has 1 successful title defense. He's the first South African fighter to win a UFC championship. 3 of his last 5 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night he's also showing up and showing out. He was the 2024 International Fighter of the Year. He's on a 10-fight winning streak, 8-0 in the UFC. 11 of his 22 wins are via submission, 9 via knockout, so 20 of 22 via finish. And the first fight was very close, but once DDP put it on and started to come forward, he was dominating the fight. I'm not sure what Sean is going to change because I don't expect him to push forward and knock DDP out. He just doesn't have the knockout power, and he only has one knockout since 2020. DDP has a lot more ways to win this fight, but it's going to be hard to finish Sean, so it might come to a decision again. The only way I see Sean winning is if he somehow gets more output and gets DDP to get overzealous and tire himself out so he can steal some rounds, or if he actually tries to grapple DDP, but we already know he's probably not going to do that. So I do think DDP is going to showcase improved striking. He's just going to keep coming at Sean, be active earlier in the fight, unlike he did the first time he waited too long to get going. But he is a very weird, non-technical battering ram, to put it at best. And I think he might get a finish this time. For that reason, I'm saying also and still, I'm taking Dricus du Plessis. We're putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. But next weekend, we are back to the Apex for a very fun fight night card, headlined by Jared Cannonier and Gregory Rodriguez. But yeah, lackluster pay-per-view, Saudi Arabia, decent. So hopefully Q1 we get some fights that pick up and really give us some headlines. That's episode 84. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. Eagles over Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I have a preseason bet. I literally picked that exact thing, so your boy's trying to win some money. But I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.